Welcome back, everybody, to part 2 of my 4-inch lift series. Hopefully part 2 will be the last part, but I still have to modify the front sway bar links. And I don't have the bushings and haven't gotten a piece of pipe to do it with yet, so I may make a separate video on that. Who knows? We're going to do a rear spring today. Might do both, depending on how much grief it gives me. I expect this to be stupid easy. Got a jack stand under the frame. Got my jack under the axle to control the axle height. I'm going to leave the tire on the other side. The only real interesting thing I predict is getting that brake hose off. And since it was already off just a couple weeks ago when I did the brakes, because I already put new brake hoses on this, I don't really expect any grief. The shock bolts are all filled with dirt and crap, but they're easy to get to. I'm not really predicting any kind of real difficulty there. So I'm going to see how tough this spring is to get out. So here's one thing worthy of note. That's the old brake hose on the right for the rear and the new one on the left. The old one had one of these horseshoe clips. I know it doesn't look like a horseshoe clip anymore, that you put around this. Let's see if I can hold the camera and show you at the same time. Goes around this lower of these two rings, and that's what keeps it from going through the hole in the frame rail. And then it has one of these bigger clips that goes in the top one that pinches it so that it can't move. The new brake hose doesn't need one of these. It just has a much larger hex that keeps it from going through the frame rail. So that can be a good thing because you don't have to worry about these stupid clips. But also, let me tell you something. Those larger clips, they are hard to get out, and that one's in a tough position. And sometimes doing that to these is the only easy way to get them out. So that's going to be fun. And there's my old hose, which is 2 weeks old, versus my new one, which is 2 days old. And they're going in, that new one's going in next. Okay, I got that brake line replaced. The new brake hose is in, and that wasn't that big of a deal, which is kind of shocking because me and steel brake lines and flex hoses have a long, unpleasant history going back a lot. A couple of things I didn't anticipate but should have. One is the parking brake lines, the cables to the parking brake on the back. I'm hoping there's going to be enough, but I'm not sure. And the other is this hose for the rear diff vent, which I can always extend that. I'm not worried about it. I broke the shock nuts loose. They came loose real easy. And let's get this spring out of here next. Okay, that back spring is out. Things worthy of note? Nothing really, you know. I mean, I had to put heat on the nuts on the bottom of the U-bolts again. Once again, they spun out a turn or two and then stopped, even though I wire brushed them and sprayed them, but 20 seconds on each one with the torch and they came right off without a problem. Other than that, you know, nothing really. I did note that on this spring, the hole in this plate is large enough to clear the nut, so it's not like on the front where I'm going to have to enlarge those holes, which makes me very happy because that drill has made my wrists and my hands really sore, so I'm happy not to have to do that again. Other than that, just put it back together. Can't think of anything else worthy of note. Oh, other than there's been a small bee back here driving me crazy. He tangled with the Harbor Freight electric fly swatter a couple times, and while it didn't kill him, it seemed like it hurt enough that he decided to go and be a bug elsewhere. You'd think they'd have other business than harassing me. And by the way, anybody who tries to tell you that there are no flies and insects in Arizona, punch them right in the mouth, because it's a lie. All right, I'm going to take a break, chug a bottle of water. I'm going to put that spring in. Okay, that is the spring back together on this side. I have to admit, I had a little bit of a struggle getting it to line up. Of course, I knew ahead of time everything would clearance and fit, and I had to come along around it, but it still took a bit of wiggling to get that alignment pin to go in. That is one stiff spring. I'm not too thrilled about the parking brake cable. I have never heard of anybody putting a 4-inch lift on these having to change the parking brake cable or modify it in some way. But maybe when I get the wheel on it and I get the weight of the vehicle back down on the wheel, maybe that will, right now it's on the axle, but it's still, because of the two different springs, it's still way lower on this side than it is on the other side, and I think lower here than it will normally be. So maybe that'll be okay. This turned out to be okay. I was thinking about that. That would have been easy to fix, but let's get the wheel back on it, and we'll see if that situation changes. And even then, it's not going to be the way it's going to be until the spring on the other side is done too. That's that spring done. There is still a jack stand under the frame rail on the other side holding the wheel off the ground. So be aware that it may change where it's sitting just a wee bit. But for some mismatched springs, that looks like it's going to sit pretty much how I wanted it to. I think I'm going to get away with that parking brake cable, but once I get the other spring done, we will revisit it. It is 11:45 in the morning. It is 90 degrees out, and I have had about all of the desert sun that I really want to cope with for one day. So I'm going to go in, do some other stuff, and come back tomorrow morning, and we will get that other spring, that last spring, replaced. So it is a beautiful morning in Arizona. It is about 7:30 in the morning and about 70 degrees, and we're headed to the upper 90s in the afternoon. So let's get that last spring done before that happens. I may even extend those sway bar links today too, if I get a chance. So let me drag everything out and let's get that driver's rear wheel off and we'll get this done. Okay, the last of the stock springs is out. Things worthy of note. To be honest with you, there was really only one. The muffler and tailpipe are close enough to the shock, and those steel lines up here are close enough that the shock wasn't going to come out without something moving. Now, I don't want to cut the exhaust system. I don't really want to pull all the hangers down, and I certainly don't want to muck about with those steel lines because those are the fuel lines. So right up in here, there's this little clamp with one bolt holding it down. Here it is. Well, there it was. It's the exact same color as the dirt. So every time I drop it, it takes a while to find it. That bolt there holding that down. Once I loosened that, then I managed to weasel that shock out of there. Fortunately, the new shock is considerably thinner than the old shock. Those old shocks were somebody's heavy-duty shock. I can't remember. I used to work at a muffler shop when I first bought this vehicle when I was like in my early 30s. And I got those shocks from them, and I put this exhaust system in then, I think. And yeah, I don't even remember what they were. They dealt with Mermont products a lot. I don't know if Mermont made shocks, but did I say anything on them? What were they? Yeah. I'm not interested enough to clean them up enough to figure out whose they were. But nonetheless, I think the new ones will go in a little bit easier. Getting that clamp and those steel lines back together and in place may be fun, because you can't get your hand up in there and see it at the same time, but I'll figure that out. So let's get that new spring in. Okay, that spring is in place. Everything is bolted down. This thing really didn't give me all that much grief. The typical hassle, wiggling it around to get the alignment pin on the, spring into the axle housing. That's just, put a little bit of pressure on it. Try and look in there, see if you're, correct this way. And put a little pressure on it, not a lot, and just start wiggling it back and forth, and you'll hear it clunk in place. Getting it right this way is the hardest part. Trying to put the come along from here up to the back bumper, it wasn't really the best plan because then it pulls this up. So I wound up getting a long cable and going back to a fence post back there so I could pull it straight back. And get it close and put a little pressure on it, wiggle it around, and it pops right in. The steel lines and the shocks were a pain in the butt, but nothing major. Everything's bolted back up. I am going to gravity bleed the brakes, put the wheel back on, and I think we're calling this one done. We'll come back, take a look at it then. Okay, it is all done. Tools are put away. Well, it's not all done. 97% done. The front sway bar links still aren't in. I don't have bushings and I don't have a piece of pipe to extend them, but I mean, that's not anywhere near kind of a big job. And what else was I thinking? Oh yeah, I'm thinking I'm gonna have to fabricate a drop hanger for that parking brake cable. Let me show you. Here is the parking brake cable, and it's got a hanger up there. I think I'm going to have to tweak the hangers a bit, and the same issue on that side, and lower that down a little bit somehow. I don't know that that's a problem. I mean, it's not bound up, but it's also got the weight on it too. So that's not a job for today. Things that I knew was going to happen that I thought I might not like, well, the driveline angle for one. I'm not thrilled with that driveline angle. I know people who've raised their CJ 4 inches and said it drove fine, there was no problem. And I know other people that said it vibrated like hell. So, ways to cure that. Well, one way is to put spacers under the skid plate, which lowers the transaxle and transmission down. Problem is, it changes the angle. And the angle of these, that has to be completely level and that has to be completely level. If they're not, if one is off from the other, it's going to vibrate like hell. So I'm not sure I like that idea too much. If I tip that down, I pretty much got to tip that up a little bit. The other obvious way is to put a double U-joint end in here, a double cardan they call them, and then tip this. This will then have to be tipped all the way up directly to it. But I'm not going to worry about that for right now. I'm going to drive it and see what it's like. And those are the only two major things of note. Obviously I have not driven it. It's still not licensed and insured, but loving the way it sits. I lucked out on those springs. I was really afraid that the fronts were not going to be right, but they turned out to be perfect. And pretty much really happy with it. This is probably going to be the last job I do on this vehicle this summer, before summer anyway, because it is now just getting too hot outside to want to do anything. Because it is right now, I'm thinking it must be right about noon. No, it's not. It's 11:30. It's 11:30 and it is 11:30 in the morning and it's 91 degrees out. And that's, you can still work in the morning now, but here in another month it's going to be, that 91 it is now is going to be 91 at 8 a.m. or higher. So that's probably it for now for the Jeep. Next time you see it, it'll probably have a reflective cover over it, and I won't pull it off until, daytime temperatures drop below 100 again. So anyway, thanks for watching. I might make another separate video on extending the sway bar links. It's a pretty simple job, and I may not. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one. Bye for now.